Welcome to Life of a Founder. Our goal here is to give you an inside look at the experiences of small business owners who have started, operated, and grown a business from the ground up. We strongly believe that there's no better way to learn than by listening to the stories of others. So whether you're already an entrepreneur or dreaming of becoming one in the future, we are sure you'll gain valuable insights from every episode. Without further ado, let me introduce you to the man behind the mic, our host, Matthew Sumter.
Be passionate about what it is you're about to do. And if you don't have a raging passion around it, you might want to find that first, or find that thing that you are passionate about.
You know who made it.
Hey everyone, welcome to Life of a Founder. My name is Matthew Sumter, and I want to introduce you to my guest and friend, Regan Ervin, the founder of Capital E Advisors. Before we get started, though, I want you to let the listeners know what is one piece of advice that you would give someone who's wanting to start a business.
If I may, I'd like to maybe share a few things. The first thing is maybe the timing. And I remember years ago, I had a cousin who we started a business together, and he was graduating from college, and we were just having a conversation about what he wanted to do. And I really encouraged him, like straight out of school, start your own business. He wanted to be a general contractor. And, rather than work for someone else or go out and get a real job, so to speak, start from the beginning. Because as soon as you accept a real job, meaning working for someone else, you get comfortable. You got the salary, the benefits. And I said, this might be the only time where you can afford to take this risk because you have nothing. And so he did that, and he's is running a successful business today, 15, 20 years later. And so the timing is important because I feel like you have that opportunity at the very beginning of your career. And then the next window that opens up is later in your career when you've amassed some assets of your own where you can afford to take that risk, that you're not putting yourself or your family in financial peril. So the timing is kind of important to think about in this if you're really serious about wanting to work for yourself.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, that's kind of been my situation is I've wanted to jump out and try something, but like you said, you've got that security, you've got the benefits and everything that you just can't step away from very easily. So.
Yeah, it's interesting because my business is a lot about risk management. And so as I think about this, it's really about risk management. When can you afford to take that risk? Well, at the beginning of your career, just fresh out of school, the risk is low. You don't have much, worst case is you got to go find a job later on. And that risk changes over time. The other thing I would say is make sure that you have enough capital to do this. This kind of plays into some of my story that we may get into a little later on. But ensuring that you can take that risk. And if you aren't well capitalized, it's going to impact the decisions you make. And those decisions will likely hinder your success and your ability to grow and achieve the things you want to achieve. And then probably the most important thing is be passionate about what it is you're about to do. And if you don't have a raging passion around it, you might want to find that first, or find that thing that you are passionate about. And I'm fortunate in that when I left, I really had a clear vision of what I wanted to do and a lot of passion behind that. And that enables me then to talk to people more passionately about what it is I do, which I think helps inspire not just me, but the person on the other side of the table as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of entrepreneurs or would-be entrepreneurs, that is a flaw, is that get great ideas and we jump into them gung-ho, and then it starts to fizzle out because it's not necessarily a passion.
Yeah, it's probably something we always fight in terms of staying passionate about the thing you're doing because, it can get monotonous at times.
Well, why don't you go ahead and tell me a little bit about your business? Let's start with what age were you when you started it? What do you do? What's your age now? Kind of how long have you been in this? And just a general overview.
Sure. So I'm in the financial service business. I run a registered investment advisory practice. So we essentially manage money for individuals, help them on financial planning and some other things around that. I always talk about that I am genuinely trying to help people simplify their financial life. And that is kind of the driving importance of my business and really being genuine about that. when I graduated, I spent 10 years essentially in corporate management, not in this industry, and then spent 10 years in this industry. And then the last 5 years I've been on my own. And so my journey to me is interesting in the sense that I wasn't born in this industry. I kind of learned it mid-career. And as such, I think that gives me an advantage in the sense that I'm not institutionalized. I'm not doing it the way that it's always been done or that other people are doing it, because I had to figure it out on my own. And I think that has given me something kind of unique in terms of our service offering.
Okay. What originally inspired you to go out on your own? I mean, you said you were working with someone else or working for someone else originally. Is that correct? And what encouraged you to kind of take that and run with it?
So I spent 10 years at another registered investment advisory practice, and I was new at the time into the industry. And so it took me some time to kind of understand just the industry and how it operates. And, about halfway into that experience, I started kind of questioning, are we good at what it is we're doing? And I didn't ever question whether we were well-intended. We were absolutely well-intended. We were on the right side of this industry, but that doesn't necessarily automatically imply that you're going to be good at this. And as time progressed, I realized that we aren't as good at this as maybe we think we are or think we were. And I started really beginning to lose conviction around the things that we were doing or how we were doing it. And it started developing kind of because I'm always trying to solve problems ultimately, started to look at this as, all right, how would I solve this problem? And started kind of creating that plan, which ultimately became my own business plan. But I made a genuine effort to try to correct the things that we were doing to provide better outcomes. And ultimately, it was difficult to kind of steer a ship in a different direction. Folks were at that firm had been for 20, 30 years. And it was just, it's naturally difficult for people to change the things that they're doing, the things that they believe.
I don't know if you answered this or not, but when did you start? What age were you?
Oh,
you said 5 years?
Let's see. I'm 47 now. I've been on my own for 5 years.
Okay.
So 42.
So kind of a late entrepreneur.
I mean, I see, like, at age 42, for me, it was the right time. Because if you start too late, like, let's say to fast forward 10 years at 52, the amount of time you're going to be in business for yourself is now limited. And this is an interesting business in that most people don't want to make most people don't want to change their investment advisor. If they've been working with someone that they truly know and trust, they don't want to change that. It's disruptive in nature. And, and they feel that they're going to jeopardize their outcome. So.
Yeah. And I mean, was that a challenge trying to get people at the beginning when you kind of had a base to work with, but like you said, it's difficult to get people to change advisors. So is it difficult for you when you started to kind of get that built up?
That's a good question. I didn't take anything for granted. There is a lot about this stepping off and doing my own thing that was unproven. And that specifically what that is or was, do I have the ability to bring in clients? Because that was never part of my responsibility beforehand. Not in a specific sense. And so I was unproven in that regard, but I was passionate about what it is I was about to do and how we were going to do it. And I think ultimately that passion helped a lot, because again, if you can speak with conviction and believe the things that you're doing and saying, that's compelling.
All right. So you've been on your own for 5 years now. Have you considered adding a partner or any employees or looking for help, or are you at that point?
So when I set out, I always thought and planned on building a business, which entails hiring people and growing and building something, bigger than just yourself. I still believe that is the plan, but the pandemic hit. And I think that caused me to refocus a little bit in terms of what's important and how I was going to go about this. And then I knew, we all kind of got pushed into a situation where we're working from home. And I was fortunate because I had office space prior to the pandemic and left my office space at the end of the year, right before the pandemic hit. And so part of my story is that I left my old firm with a partner, and we started this together, and we're no longer together. And part of that separation, or the reason for the separation, I believe was a function of, could we both afford to take this risk? And a lot of that has to do with, where are you at in life? What type of wealth or financial security do you have at that time? And what are the business decisions that you need to make and how you're going to spend capital to invest in the business? And I think we were at two different places. And I think ultimately our separation was related to that. And this idea that we couldn't take the same type of risk or the same amount of risk once we did this. So we split a year or two into our endeavor here. And I've been on my own for the last 3 years, essentially.
Okay. And do you outsource any work, or you do everything from, obviously you're a finance guy, so hopefully you can do the accounting, but is there anything that you get assistance with, or you're pretty much day to day, you're doing everything?
Let's hope I can do the accounting, but sometimes I'm not certain. I actually outsource the accounting, the bookkeeping.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm certainly not taking out pieces of paper and drawing, charts by hand. So I guess I outsource to various tools and systems and vendors. But no, generally the core of what we do, I do in-house. Actually, as I say that, I'm immediately second guessing. I outsource the legal piece, the trust and estate planning, and the tax preparation. Those are two expertises that people or firms are become very proficient in. And I'm guiding people through that process and partnering with those professionals. And something unique to my business is I pick up the cost of those services as part of just the normal management fee that we charge, because I feel that those are important.
So you're trying to provide kind of like a full service package, not just investment advice, but the legal, the will, that sort of thing? Yes,
because I think fundamentally those are really important to a client's well-being and financial well-being and outcome. And what I experienced in the past is it was hard to get those tasks done because the responsibility ultimately falls on the client because they're paying for that. So essentially it's based on their availability and willingness to proceed, right? I can flip that script if I'm picking up the cost. It shifts the balance of control onto the advisor, and now I can schedule it and sort of hold that individual accountable to going through this process. And it worked immediately. This is something that we talked about doing in the past. And when I launched and with this as part of the business plan, that first month or two, I had met with more CPAs, client CPAs, and attorneys than I had in the prior 10 years. So I knew that that part of my business plan was intact and useful for clients.
Can you kind of explain us how your compensation works? How you're compensated by the clients? Is that just a percentage? You get fees with trades? How does that work?
Yeah. In this industry, there's two divisions. One is they're charging commissions and trails and essentially they're selling product and they're compensated for the things that they're selling. And the other half of the business, which is the side that I'm on, is I am charging an asset-based fee. So it's essentially a percentage of the assets under management that I'm charging on. And that percentage tiers down as the client's asset level grows. And hopefully that kind of aligns our interest in that. But specifically, because, whether you've asked it or not, you're probably getting there. We charge typically 1.25% annually on the first $1 million of assets that we're managing.
Okay. How has your compensation grown over the life of your business? Is that something that's progressively getting bigger just as your clients' accounts get bigger? Are you bringing on new people? People want to know how much you make doing this kind of work.
Yeah. When we started, I left a good job and started at zero, and we had to bring on every client. We were able to take some from our old firm, a lot of friends and family. And I don't know exactly when the dust settled what our asset level was. So our business is typically kind of measured by assets under management, or AUM. And if I had to take a guess, we were probably around 12 million in assets. So that's two people.
Yeah.
Two people starting their business on their own with 12 million in assets. And so if you applied, 1.25%, which at that point it was probably 1% because a lot of those folks, that was their existing rate prior to coming to us. And so, you can just run the numbers. That's $120,000 to $140,000 of revenue with 2 people. And it took a little bit of time to kind of even get to that level, but that's when the dust settled, maybe 6 months after starting. And yes, we've grown since then. Today, that number is closer to 48 to 50 million.
Oh, nice. That's great.
In addition to that revenue, it's kind of important to understand, like that, to me, that seems to be a big number. But we also, our cost structure is probably a little higher in the sense, now I don't have office space, so I guess I'm saving there, but cost structure in terms of we're paying for a lot of those professional services, trust estate and tax preparation. But it's done with purpose. It's done to forge a tighter relationship with those other professionals, because completing those, obviously everyone has to complete their taxes, but getting the information back from the CPAs is a input that we need to effectively manage their accounts or make investment decisions and provide advice. I don't need it in all cases, but when you need it, you need it. And if you don't have it, you're kind of in position.
Right. Every business obviously has expenses. So, I mean, the gross income is not a real indicator, but I mean, obviously you've grown and you're doing pretty well right now. Well, what's your goal in your business day to day? I mean, how would you measure success in your business?
How do I measure success in my business?
Is it the numbers, assets under management?
For me, any outsider is going to look at a business like mine and measure it by AUM, assets under management. So that's kind of the basic way. If you meet another advisor, what are your assets under management? It's that type of question. But I think for me, how do I measure success? Good or bad, I'm probably not as financially driven as a lot of entrepreneurs. I care about actually having an impact in people's lives. And I think deriving fulfillment from that is important to me. And so I want clients that I'm close to, that I know well, and that I feel like I'm having a genuine impact in their lives.
Great. So what originally inspired you to go out on your own, start your own business?
That feeling that, I lost conviction around what it is we were doing at the old firm. That was ultimately it. And I realized that was an industry-wide problem. So I felt like it was a problem where we could provide a better solution than I think what is available out there.
And what kind of skills do you think it takes to be an entrepreneur, a successful entrepreneur, and how do you rate yourself in those skills that are important?
Oh, man. The skill set of an entrepreneur, I think it could be a multifaceted, but, passion's not a skill, but you need to be passionate. Skill-wise, you've got to be able to work with people and work with people through difficult challenges. That's a skill set and important, because you got to keep people kind of committed to what it is you're setting out to achieve with them. And when they waver, you've got to bring them back. So that's important skill set, and I'm a sole practitioner. And so I think that what's required for me is a very broad and diverse skill set, because I'm handling A to Z, the nuts and bolts of everything. And that is, that could be a challenge.
Yeah, I can imagine people are coming to you for advice on a lot of things that you might not consider necessarily your wheelhouse.
Yeah, sometimes my knowledge base, my own knowledge base, surprises me. But where you asked me to kind of rate where I know I'm weak is probably in my communication. I always have ideas like, I want to be communicating this, or I should be doing that. But that takes real diligence of sitting down and writing those those newsletters or those emails, and I need to get better at that, and get quicker at it. Ultimately, I think that's probably one of the bigger hindrances.
Are there any tools such as software or services that have been vital to your business success?
Oh, of course. I think the computer is underrated. I couldn't imagine doing what I do without a computer or a phone or a car. Like those tools are invaluable. And I'm probably not unique in that. Maybe I am, but I got to think that most people would rely heavily on those tools if they were starting their own business. Software, though, yeah, there's, I won't get into all the industry software, but there's a core piece of software that we use that really enables us to do what we are trying to do for clients. And it simplifies what we're doing. If we didn't have that software, it seems like this would be impossible. Yet I know years ago that others found a way to do it.
So what are the future plans for the business? Are you looking to grow it to a certain level? Someone take over for you? Someone join? What are you thinking now? It's kind of early in your journey, but...
Yeah, my future plans I do intend to kind of continue to grow and continue to build a business. I do have a goal, but it's not an overt goal, but I want to get this business to 100 million in assets, but there's a reason for that. One of the challenges we faced early on was the regulatory hurdles, getting your business set up and getting it in good standing with the regulators. And I came from an environment where we were SEC regulated, which basically means the SEC regulates investment advisory businesses over 100 million. When you're below that, you're state regulated, which basically means that you could, in theory, be regulated by 50 different government bodies. And that's not even, those are just all like, the states, and there's other regulatory entities that could interfere with this too. And that was tough. Getting set up in Missouri in particular was really challenging. Kansas was a much smoother process, which is where we're located. But we also had to get registered in Missouri, and that was a challenge. I have to get registered essentially anywhere where I have multiple clients in the state.
That sounds fun. Yeah. I come from the insurance industry, and we have a similar problems with every state requiring different data, and it's not the most fun.
Yeah.
I don't know if you consider yourself like entrepreneurial or this just kind of came up, but were there other ideas that you've had, things you wanted to start, maybe something that's kind of in the side of your mind you just didn't have the time for?
I think when I started this business, I knew what I wanted to be doing, and again had a clear vision around that. But I am a serial entrepreneur in some sense. I've run a lawn and landscape business. I largely inherited that business from a brother, and it was a one crew operation. But I did that while I worked a full-time job for a number of years, and grew that business as well. Proud to report that's still in the family. I just don't have any responsibility for it anymore. And I've been involved in the rental business, owning single-family rental units. And, these things that I've done over time, mixed results. And, that's a very fair way to assess my own success. But I think I've learned a lot through every one of those experiences, and learned through those challenges and when things hadn't gone right.
Well, so we've heard a lot about your business and kind of what you do as far as investing and that sort of thing. What do you do outside of your company for fun, leisure activities?
I spend a lot of time with friends. Spend a lot of time with those friends working out in the mornings, hanging out and having coffee. I do a little traveling. Really enjoy spending time with my, not to pinpoint just one child, but with my son who plays soccer. I spend a lot of time around soccer. His soccer,
Okay.
I enjoy watching professional soccer. That's maybe a little bit of vicarious relationship there.
I got a little bit of that with my son in football, so yeah.
Yeah.
American football, that is.
Yeah. I think I'm getting into traveling more as I get older, and the kids are a little more grown up, so I can afford to take time to travel and enjoy those experiences.
Beach or mountain?
For me, mountain. But we take an annual trip now to New York City, and so it could also be big city. It should be beach, mountain, or big city. Nice. And I still think it's mountain for me.
Do you have anyone that you would consider a mentor or someone that really influenced you?
I think if in terms of people who have influenced me, my mother in particular, and I talk about this with others, and she has always been one who has recognized and tried to convey to others that they have value, and that's important to me. And I've kind of made that a big principle in my own life, is to always look for opportunities to show people that they're valued and they matter. And it's a struggle. Like it's like there's plenty of times where I do the opposite of that, but it is something that I think that I hold dear to myself. So I would put that up there. In the business world, there's a guy who's been pretty formative in my thinking around investing. It's a guy, I don't know him personally, but it's a guy by the name of Ben Felix. He just, I believe he's a degreed engineer, a certified financial planner, a CFA, which is a really lofty credential in this investment industry, and just a very bright, very well-spoken individual and a very practical thinker. Most of his viewpoints are very supported by an immense amount of research and data, and I just have always appreciated his view of investing and management.
Okay, awesome. Beyond that, do you have any other book or podcast recommendations that you think would really help someone who's thinking about starting a business?
Yeah, one podcast, and it's an old podcast by the name of Startup. And I think it started in 2014. And that first season is intriguing. It's a gentleman by the name of Alex Blumberg who came out of This American Life, which is another kind of podcast of sorts or storytelling feature on NPR. And he was a producer there. Then he started Planet Money, which is a kind of a well-known podcast or news segment. And then he went and started his own podcast business. So the business idea was to create a series of podcasts and essentially begin to institutionalize that industry. And so his first podcast was this podcast titled Startup, which is his journey as he set up his business and went through those early stages and pains of building his business. And it's fascinating. It's fascinating because he ends up with a partner, and you get this insider's perspective from him and his partner of what they're thinking as they negotiate with one another. I mean, it's fascinating. And I would encourage any entrepreneur to listen to that.
Yeah, and full disclosure, you told me about that a few days ago, and actually I've been binging it, so I'm on episode 15 right now. So. Oh, good.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. What do you think so far?
Yeah, it's very interesting. So
yes. And a little fast forwarding, I don't know, maybe 6-7 years later, they sold that business for a large sum.
Yeah, every entrepreneur's dream, right?
Yeah. It's also interesting because like in that podcast, he's married, and so you get the perspective of his wife as well. And you'll have to listen to it. I mean, it's, one might be critical of it. It's like a little too close to home.
It's interesting because they record pretty much every conversation they have and then broadcast it for everyone to hear. So,
yep.
Yeah, get the inside scoop.
All right. So there's that podcast for entrepreneurs that I would highly recommend. And Ben Felix, I think for any investor, I think he will set your compass straight and definitely worth listening to. You can find him on YouTube. He runs a podcast called Rational Reminder. But on YouTube, he does shorter clips that are very, very informative and well-researched. And then on the book side, I feel like I'm in a constant quest to read Count of Monte Cristo. And I've started that twice over the years and gotten deep into the book. And for some reason, I've just never finished. But I think I got turned on to that book because someone mentioned it was their favorite book, which I believe is my brother who mentioned that.
Yeah.
And then another book that I haven't read is Great Expectations, another book that someone said was their favorite book in their lifetime, and they are an avid reader. And that boy, I still can't. I'm struggling with the Old English.
You're picking some difficult reads to start with, or to attempt to.
Yeah, and ironically, you're asking me what do I recommend. I'm recommending books that technically I haven't actually read.
Yeah.
So
that's all right. Well, before we get to wrapping up, is there anything else that you'd like to share specifically?
Let's see. Just to maybe leave something that can be taken as inspiring to anybody who's pondering whether they should start their own business. The journey's been worth it. The journey's been worth it for me. I try not to take my life for granted. I live a good life. My family lives a good life in a lot of aspects. I have a very good work-life balance. And, I try to acknowledge that, but I feel like, and I know like some entrepreneurs start and they are working, 100-hour weeks, and then that goes on for a long time. I get that. But, the journey's been worth it for me. And so I would encourage someone who's in a position to be able to do this and who's passionate about something is to take that risk and at least attempt it. Unfortunately, we only get one shot at life. And, if you don't do it now or when the time's right, we'll all wake up one day and, we're going to be 70 years old and wishing for retirement. So,
yeah, that's great. Thank you. Well, I didn't warn you about this, but it is time for the rapid fire question round.
Oh boy.
Where
I'd like to at least acknowledge to the audience that this is out of the blue. Had no advanced warning of these rapid fire questions.
Easy.
So prepare for anything.
They are easy. It's just the first thing that comes into your mind. What's your favorite month?
April. Do I get to say why?
I guess you can, if you care to explain. That's go ahead.
What do you not like about April? I mean, the weather's changing. There's no bugs. It's warm. Like perfect time of year. And for anybody to think otherwise, you're crazy.
All right. Favorite vacation destination?
Oh, that's a lot harder. Specific destination?
Somewhere you've been that you liked.
I like the outdoors. I think it also depends, like, who are you traveling with? Certain groups I would say, like, the outdoors. And, with my wife, it's probably more big city.
This is not very rapid fire, but all right. 4-letter word that begins with B.
Beer.
Beer. Well, that tells us something. All right. I thought maybe bond or something. No.
Who wants to invest in bonds? Seriously. That's a joke. That's a joke.
A night out or a night in?
A night in.
Do aliens exist?
In like human form, that like beings? No. All
right. Well, that was awesome. Thank you for taking the time. How can people get a hold of you or get in contact with you or find your information online or social media? Or
they can go to my website, capitaleadvisors.com. All my contact information is out there. They can call me if they have my phone number. Call me. I'm always happy to talk, to listen, whatever the case may be.
All right. Well, it was great talking to you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Life of a Founder. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss any of our upcoming episodes. And if you have any friends or family members who would enjoy the show, please share the link with them. We truly believe that small businesses are the lifeblood of our communities, so we encourage you to take that first step and start your journey toward business ownership.